Hello, my name is Gloria Ladson-Billings, and I'm the Kellner Family Professor of Urban Education at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm delighted to be able to speak to you in the 2014 Diversity in Research and Practice Conference. Unfortunately, I was not able to be here in person on the beginning day of your conference, but I hope you will listen in on tonight's talk, and just reminding you that this conference is about connecting people to purpose and practice for progress.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. I like the energy in this room, all these smiling faces. On behalf of the Black Student Network of Teachers College, Columbia University, my name is Christina Dion. I'm the president of the Black Student Network, and I would like to welcome you to our last and best pre-conference event to kick off our 5th annual Diversity and Research Conference. Can we get a round of applause? Now, there has been an amazing team that has come together to bring this conference to what it is now, and to bring you some amazing speakers. So I want to quickly hand it off to the chair of the conference. Can you please help me welcome Mr. Alan Wright?
Thank you. So good evening. My name is Alan Wright, and as Christina already told you, I'm the chair. I'm the vice president for academic affairs and the chair of the conference. So that means I have the pleasure of providing this wonderful experience of a platform for everyone to learn and share their knowledge this year. So on behalf of the Black Student Network, I want to welcome you to this pre-conference talk and express our thanks that you chose to be here with us tonight. Two of the most important parts of the Black Student Network's purpose is to encourage high standards of scholastic achievement and also to provide networking opportunities that enhance our professional development. We believe that this conference theme, connecting people to purpose and practice, exemplifies both of those aspects of our mission, and we hope that you'll get both academic inspiration and professional uplift from tonight's talk and from tomorrow's full day of conference events. Please review the handout that you received when you entered the room. If you didn't, we have more copies. That's the schedule for tomorrow's conference. If you have other questions, please make sure that you reach out to me or any of the conference planners after tonight's event. And if I can just have my conference planners raise their hand. So, they really have been incredible. So, given our conference theme, connecting people to purpose and practice for progress, we are exceptionally fortunate to have our pre-conference speaker, Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, here with us this evening. Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings is the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Education and a researcher at the Wisconsin Center for Education and Research. A pedagogical theorist, her research examines sociocultural issues in classrooms and teaching from a stance that recognizes that the power of culture as a means for supporting the education of all children. She is perhaps best known for coining the term culturally relevant pedagogy. Dr. Ladson-Billings has won numerous awards for her work, including the Romness Faculty Fellowship, the Spencer Postdoctoral Fellowship, the Palmer O. Johnson Outstanding Research Award in 2007. She was awarded the Hildell Award, the highest faculty honor given to a professor at the University of Wisconsin for outstanding research, teaching, and service. She received the Distinguished Service Award from Teachers College, Columbia University in 2008. Dr. Ladson-Billings was the president of the American Educational Research Association, the AERA, from 2005 to 2006. As president of the AERA, she highlighted how the term racial achievement gap can unfairly construct students from a deficit orientation. Instead, she suggested the term education debt. This shift in thinking enables us to move toward a discourse that holds us all accountable for the historical, moral, social, political, and economic factors that have disproportionately affected African American, Latino, Asian, and other non-white students. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings.
Well, good evening.
Good
How's
evening.
everybody doing?
Great.
I'm going to need you to have some energy because I've been at this all day. tremendous hard work on this, and some of you may have known that we originally planned to do this tomorrow morning, but I have a commitment back in Madison. Couldn't find a flight that would get me back in time, and so Alan was gracious enough to figure out a time I could speak with you. So I'm really glad to be here and really happy to be able to kind of kick off what it looks like going to be a wonderful conference. I'm going to talk to you about some new work I'm doing, and so it's going to seem a little bit different from much of the stuff you might know me from. I should also make the correction. I didn't make it earlier with Amy's conference, but I'm not the assistant vice chancellor anymore. I did that to help out a friend. And when the year ended, I told them they could have this back. And so now I'm back with the best job that anybody can have in a university, and that is a endowed full professor. There's no more freedom than doing that. So I'm happy to be back in teaching and research and university service. So I've kind of called my remarks hip-hop, hip-hop, and you're going to see what I mean by that in a minute. Subtitle, Reinventing Culturally Relevant Pedagogy. But I always feel the need to start with kind of a tribute. This is a young man who was a student of ours who died tragically last fall of 2012. John Vietnam Nguyen. Everybody knows his name is John Vietnam. And John was one of our very talented first wave students. I'm going to be talking a little bit about first wave and the work I'm doing with them. But I want to show you John's audition tape and how he got into first wave. I won't show the whole tape, but I'll just show you a little bit of it so you can see what an impressive young man he was.
You talking about Dragon Tales. I was talking about Clifford the Big Red Dog. Yeah. I had to do this first though.
I didn't let you see his dancing, I didn't let you see his graffiti art, and he really came to us to be a videographer. And so he's just a remarkable young man, and I always just like to pay tribute to him because, you know, it's a huge loss in our community. Right now in Chicago, they have named a street after him because he's just a powerful young man. But for more than 20 years, I've been focused on helping teachers learn from the pedagogical expertise of those teachers who have been successful with African American students. I coined the term culturally relevant pedagogy to describe their work. So typically when people think of me, they either think of that Or if they read the scholarly piece, they think of that piece that was in the American Educational Research Journal. But more recently, I've come to see how the culture that invigorates and enlivens today's students, hip-hop, is a primary driver in helping maintain culturally relevant pedagogy's viability and usefulness. So in the talk this evening, I want to describe how hip-hop provides a hope for engaging students in a culturally relevant way to ensure their academic, cultural, and social civic success. I think that the vision of education in the United States is a primary vehicle for economic success. So let me also include that some people also think about me in terms of critical race theory. So that's me and my colleague Bill Tate. We had to marry to write a piece which said race mattered, and it mattered a lot. I can tell you that a lot of people didn't like it, and a lot of the people who didn't like it were not who you think. Okay? Those would be the people on our side who didn't like it at all. And, but I think we've actually did the right thing by going ahead and sort of has spurred a bit of a movement in education. And a lot of my colleagues in the law school say that we've been able to go further in education with CRT than they've been able to go with law. So, typically when people think of this notion of culturally relevant pedagogy, it's sort of three things that we focus on. That is that academic achievement, or better said, student learning. I'm not just talking about what kids get on tests, but what do they actually learn is a key feature of culturally relevant pedagogy. A notion of cultural competence, the idea that they should both know and understand their own culture, but to acquire at least one additional culture. In other words, in the best of all possible worlds, all of our kids leave school multiculturally competent. But at minimum, they would leave biculturally competent, right? So then that means that even white students need to leave school with fluency in at least one other culture. So it's not just for this group of kids, or just one segment of our society. And then the third piece, which I almost never see when people tell me they're doing culturally relevant pedagogy, is this thing that we've called social political consciousness. That is, in terms of kids, it's the so what factor. Number one, why do we have to learn this? What does this have to do with anything? The social political consciousness is an attempt to help kids understand that they should be learning things that help them solve real life problems. That they'll be able to fix some things that's wrong with the society based on what they're learning. So, in the U.S. we have this vision of education as the primary vehicle for economic success. Indeed, from the time that kids start going to school, they get this message about going to school to get a good job. But while the overall economic indicators do tell us that high school graduates indeed earn more than high school dropouts, and college graduates earn more than high school graduates, this idea that there is a direct connection between schooling and jobs is just not so. Because as school people, we have no control over the economy. So my youngest son went to school, went to college, got his degree, but the bottom fell out of the .com folks, and that's the kind of work he did. So he did what was right. It didn't guarantee him a job. He had to wait until the economy improved. The school's not in charge of that. The notion, the vicissitudes of the economy, and I think the changing job landscape offer us no guarantee that a diploma or degree will result in a job. We hope it will, but indeed we don't know. And I make this point to underscore that we have to help students understand that the reason they should seek an education is much larger than to get a job. They ought to understand that their education should be linked to their own empowerment and their own liberation. So as I said, more than 20 years ago, I started investigating teachers who were successful with those students that we think of as failures in our current schools, African Americans. And I came to call the work culturally relevant pedagogy. It serves as a theoretical construct for explaining the kind of education that's more likely to ensure the success of most students, particularly those students who are traditionally underserved by our schools. So it involves these three propositions that I said: supporting student learning, developing cultural competence, and encouraging the socio-political consciousness. That first proposition, the idea of supporting student learning, appears so obvious that it might actually seem unnecessary to talk about it. But I want to make the point that much of what happens in classrooms, and particularly in college and university classrooms, has little to do with what students learn. Instead, the focus is on what teachers cover. In fact, I have a lot of colleagues who are proud that a certain number of their students do not pass. Right? They associate those high failure rates with the sense of increased rigor. They see their courses as sieves that allow only a small percentage of the students to get through. But a culturally relevant approach sees student learning as the goal for every student to be successful. So rather than creating a sieve, someone who would be culturally relevant actually creates a net designed to catch all students. The goal is not coverage, it is mastery. One of the tasks of a course that I offer entitled Culturally Relevant Pedagogy is to go observe teaching in some place other than the School of Education. And my students are encouraged to go to other professional schools. So I send them to the law school, business school, the med school, or other parts of the university so they can go to the College of Letters and Science or College of Agriculture or Life Science. I even encourage them to look at teaching in non-traditional settings, such as a swim class, or Tai Chi, or yoga, or athletic coaching. A couple years ago, one of my students did her observation of teaching in the med school's cadaver lab. I don't know if I have that picture. No. I did have that picture. And what she described was an excellent example of a teacher who was focused on mastery, not coverage. The lab was comprised of students in groups of 8. 2 of the students had been in the lab earlier and completed the lab on the renal system the day before. Their task was to teach the renal system to the other 6 students. The medical professor and a mortician were also in the lab, and they were going from group to group observing. The 2 student teachers were detailed and meticulous about their teaching, quizzing the students in their group throughout and checking to make sure every student fully understood the renal system. The reason that the students were so careful with their group members was that the medical professor would eventually choose 2 of the students in their group to take the lab exam for the entire group. The grade that these 2 students received would be averaged and given to everyone in the group. Because the medical school is looking for maximum competence from its soon-to-be doctors, not coverage from its professors. So what might it mean for us to develop teachers who demanded that kind of high-level performance from all of the students? I mean, it just sort of makes sense. You don't want a C student, on the renal system, telling you, I think you got a problem with your kidneys and I'm going to have to go in there and do something. No, not with them C's you ain't doing. Right? But that's sort of the outlook is that we got to make sure everybody's actually here and able to function at a very high level. And so they press their classmates, right? You got to know this because what you do reflects on all of us. The second component is this notion of cultural competence. And it's often misunderstood. When I use this term, I'm referring to one's ability to firmly be grounded in his or her culture of origin and fluent in at least one other culture. For most students of color, this generally means that they develop a deep understanding and an appreciation of their own heritage, history, language, and customs, while also accessing the mainstream culture. But white middle-class students are not exempt from developing cultural competence. And although schools typically cater directly to their culture, they too need to be fluent in at least one other culture. And as I said, in an ideal world, all of our students would leave multiculturally competent to be able to deal facilely with the cosmopolitan global world in which they'll find themselves. So my son, when he finally did get a job, and he does work in Silicon Valley, he was a very interesting kid coming through high school because he was kind of like a chameleon. He hung out with everybody. I mean, most high schools can draw a map of where everybody hangs, right? Jocks over here, stoners over here, theater geeks over here, you know, the tech geeks here. I mean, that you could do that. And in fact, at his high school, they had done that. And it was in the student paper. So I happened to ask this counselor, I said, so where does Kevin fit? And she looked at the map and she said, wow. Well, I seen him with the jocks. I seen him with the theater kids. Well, you know, I seen him with the tech geeks. Quite honestly, I seen him with the stoners. There was no group that she hadn't seen him in. And the complaint about him was that he was, quote, too social, right? Well, he has a job in Silicon Valley, where his job is to communicate between upper level management and the people in those Tyvek bunny suits in the lab, in the clean rooms. When his company was hit by the recession and they were laying people off, they did lay him off, but they had to call him back because he has, his clients are in Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Germany, and France. And the people were calling and said, well, where's Kevin? And they said, no, we got this. No. Kevin can fix this. We know Kevin knows what to do. So when I talked to him about it, I said, so why are they clamoring for you? He said, I don't know, Mom. He says, I just, I try to pay attention to what people care about. And then I also, try to respond to them. So he said, so when I'm in Germany, I know I'm not getting no sleep because they want to work. Come on, Kevin, we have to get this project done. He said, but in France, he said, they'd be like, oh, Kevin, you work too much. Have another glass of wine. And he's the kind of person who can go with the flow. He has that skill. But I think it's interesting that schools didn't recognize that about him. And that's what I would call being kind of globally conscious. I know the first time he went to London, he just called. He says, Mom, I have fallen in love. I'm going to move over here. I said, love as in a person? He said, no, love as in London. He said, these people don't do nothing but wear black, drink coffee and tea. He said, that's me. I can do this all day. But he just has this flexibility that he can move in and out of culture. And so what I'm saying is that we need to help our kids understand they are going to be in a global environment, and they do need to be able to move in and out of cultural spaces. The third component of culturally relevant pedagogy, the socio-political consciousness, as I said, is the most ignored. Teachers do understand the need to ensure student learning, and some of them are sympathetic to supporting their cultural competence. However, the idea of helping students engage directly in the social and civic concerns of their schools, communities, localities, and nation and the world seem beyond the scope of classroom teachers. So in plain English, I think of this component as the so what factor. That is that students regularly ask us why they have to learn particular things. And we regularly respond with, quote, because you're going to need this one day. By about 4th or 5th grade, they realize that we're lying. And those who are savvy learn, or should I say memorize, what we teach in order to pass our tests and our classes. Those who are less plugged into education will resist in ways that are detrimental to their own academic well-being. So a culturally relevant approach to teaching helps students understand that their learning can be and should be connected to everyday problems of living in a society that's deeply divided along racial, ethnic, linguistic, economic, environmental, social, political, and cultural lines. And they should be learning that education can and should help alleviate those problems. That indeed is the whole point that Thomas Jefferson had in mind when he talked about the need for educated citizenry. So now I'm at this evolution of culturally relevant pedagogy. I'm standing here before you more than 20 years past my first inquiries on culturally relevant pedagogy. And I'm finding that the notion of culturally relevant pedagogy, at least my understanding of practice of it, is evolving in some new and exciting ways. Those new ways are what I want to focus the remainder of my remarks on. That is how culturally relevant pedagogy can meet the needs of new century students and their teachers, regardless of level. That is from elementary school through graduate education. So one of the things is, I always ask this question, how many of you are on Twitter? Okay. See, if you're going to be working with new century students and you're not on Twitter, you're just not in the game. You're just not in the game. Because that's where they are. They're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're on Tumblr, you know. Of course, the 40-year-old plus people, we're on Facebook too, right? The kids ain't on Facebook. And they'll move on past Facebook. So, like I said, if you're not there, you're already behind the curve of new century students. We're looking at what I would call the most technologically astute, plugged-in, globally connected generation that the world has ever seen. But when I talk to most teachers and when I go into most schools, I see signs throughout admonishing the students against cell phone use. In the school that I attended a couple summers ago in Indianapolis, I walked into a classroom that had a sign on the door that said, no cell phones, no cell phones, no cell phones. And I really wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, it's not a phone, it's a computer. And that old school flip phone you got, that's a phone. But the kids have computers. This totally different understanding of devices is but one example of how new century students are different from their counterparts of earlier generations. Each year, the Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin, conducts what's called the Mindset List for its incoming freshmen. And a couple years ago, I grabbed some things off the 2016 Mindset List, and it included the following. That is, that they have, okay, I'm missing some stuff, but I'll tell you what they are. They've always lived in cyberspace, addicted to a new generation of electronic narcotics. For them, Michael Jackson's family, not the Kennedys, constitute American royalty. If they miss the Daily Show, they can always get their news on YouTube. Bill Clinton is a senior statesman of whose presidency they have little knowledge. They have never seen an airplane ticket. Ticket. There is something called a ticket, not just a boarding pass. They have a ticket. For them, women have always piloted war planes and space shuttles. For them, Star Wars has always been just a film, not a defense strategy. They've come to political consciousness during a time of increasing doubts about America's future. The Twilight Zone involves vampires, not Rod Serling. And they watch television everywhere, but on television. And I know this because I have one of them living in my house. She sits in the family room where the television is, but she doesn't turn it on. She's got Hulu and, Netflix, and she's doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? So I've shared just 10 of 75 items that were on the Mindset List to underscore how rapidly the new technologies have widened the generation gap. Aging baby boomers who have always considered themselves hip or cool or with it, and I count myself in that generation, struggling to connect with Generation Y students who will eventually teach what I'm calling new century students. And while I haven't conducted a scientific study of new century students, I've made what I think are some testable observations about them as learners. And I think we have to consider these tendencies as we evaluate our teaching. So I was about to do tendencies. So the first tendency is that they believe multitasking is an efficient way to work. The truth of the matter is it's not. I mean, the cognitive psychologists tell us, if you're doing 2 or 3 different things, you're not doing any of them well, they still do that. Right? So this young person in my house has a computer open, she got an iPod here, she got a phone, she tweeting, texting, watching some Hulu, listening to music, all that's happening all at the same time. And she writing a paper, right? It's all happening at the same time. So that's them. I'm not saying that it's right, I'm saying that's how they work. They see themselves more as consumers than students. And as such, they are either purchasing an education or shopping for schools, right? And I have to say that the university we've contributed to that. Part of it is through this whole new phenomenon of the view book. We're selling our education. Oh, here's our view book, right? I remember when my daughter was getting ready to go to college, and of my 4 kids, she's the one who was the most intellectually gifted. So she had really great board scores, she had great grades, and so everybody was sending her a view book. And so we got crates full of view books. At one point, she got the view book from Colorado. I don't know if you've ever seen the UC Colorado Boulder view book. It's beautiful because Boulder is beautiful. And that one she left on the table, and she wouldn't put it away. I mean, we had literally a hanging file system. Like you read it, and then you just put it in the thing. So I asked her, I said, "Are you ever gonna look at this book?" And she said, "Oh, those people are not serious about education. They're just selling mountains." Because all the other ones have a little a microscope on it, Nobel laureates, but Colorado have mountains, right? You can see the university somewhere in the valley, but and I tease my colleagues at Colorado, who I know are serious scholars. They said, "No, we pretty much sell them mountains." She's right. So they are thinking they're purchasing their education, and as a consequence, we have a different relationship with them than, say, a generation ago. They receive their news and information through push notices from their favorite internet sites, their blogs, programs like The Daily Show, as I mentioned earlier. Here's an interesting thing about them. Although they're heavily invested in social justice, they are less sanguine about social welfare, particularly if they have to bear the cost. Case in point, the Affordable Care Act, right? I don't want to pay for some old people's health care, to which I remind them, so you paid your own bill when you was born in maternity. You said, what, and wrote a check. Somebody has been paying your bill. Okay, now it's time for you to help pay. The same thing is about the debate about Social Security, right? I don't want to pay any Social Security. I don't want to take care of those old people. So while they care about social justice, they don't want to pay for the social welfare aspect of it. For them, email is an old technology, so I tell my colleagues all the time, stop emailing these people. You better learn to get their phone numbers and text them. You don't read their emails. They would rather get tweets or IMs, right? For them, library research can best be done on their desktop, which means they rarely leaf through an entire journal. See, I see Aaron back there smiling. Aaron, we used to read the whole journal. Yeah. You go and look for an article, but you be like, oh, this is a good one too. Oh, look at this one. Yeah. But today's new century students, they get that one article that was in the syllabus. That's the one I'm going to get the PDF, read it, I'm done. All right? They believe that it is important to stay connected, and so their phones are always at hand, and those classes that prohibit cell phone use interrupt their connections. And so one of the ways I deal with this is I do run a live Twitter feed in my classes. So I have, on these smart boards, I have a hashtag for the course. It's the electronic note passing, and I'd rather you pass it about the stuff we're doing, right? And then they also have different conceptions of copyright, intellectual property, and plagiarism. Now we're laughing, but remember, they're coming from an environment in which they can sample anything, right? That everything is a mashup. They're making mixtapes all the time. I think it's incumbent upon us to teach them what the rules are. I think we assume they know they can't do these things. So I offer these observations not to suggest that we have to adapt to their standards, but rather to suggest that it's important to know where they are so that we can do a better job of understanding them and assisting them in the classroom and beyond. So a decade ago, when people referred to the digital divide, they were talking solely about the way that social status, class, race, ethnicity, kept some students from accessing electronic information. However, with the advent of smartphones and tablet computing and other mobile devices, electronic communication is ubiquitous. Even in developing nations, mobile devices provide access to information and global communications in classrooms. I was in a rural South African town, Kwakwa. Did not even have reliable electricity. There would be times when electricity would just go out. You just wouldn't have it, right? And so when I was talking about this as a technological generation, the teachers were saying to me, oh no, we don't have all that fancy stuff you guys have in the West. Now I turned and looked at our kids. I said, how many of y'all got mobile devices? Everybody in the class had a phone. I said, how many of y'all are on Twitter? Everybody in the class. So I said, well, here's me. I'm at GJ Ladson. They're like, okay, cool, right? So it's the teacher who's out of step. So even in these really poor communities, mobile devices or telephone, cell phones, everybody has one. In fact, we saw some data that said that a cell phone is the last thing people will give up. They lose their home, they lose their car, they will hold on to their cell phone. So when I talk to school principals, I say, how many of you are communicating with families via text message? Almost none of them. You know, because they send home, send home announcements, send home a paper, right? And I'm like, if you want to get these people, you need to get their phone numbers so that you can text them, because that's one thing they'll hold on to. So, as I said, even in these developing nations, the mobile devices are providing access to information and global communications in the classroom. So the new digital divide is not between race or ethnicity, it's between generations. So as I said, the teacher who's got that flip phone is not going to be able to keep up with his or her smartphone using students. When our students can access information and knowledge via things like iTunes U and the various MOOCs that are out there and other open access online classrooms, I think we have to create more imaginative and engaging spaces in our courses. Okay, so now this next point, probably the most controversial thing I say, although Chris Emden is here, so y'all be used to this. But hip-hop can be an important cultural vehicle for connecting with new century students. So now I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that the over 30 crowd should adopt the hip-hop aesthetic. Rather, the anthropologist in me believes it's important to know as much about a culture with which you work as possible. So when I was teaching Puerto Rican children in North Philadelphia, I began a deep and rigorous study of Puerto Rican culture and the specifics of the 2 Puerto Rican communities that made their way to Philadelphia. Knowing more about those cultures helped me plan relevant learning activities, it increased my communication with the parents, and it boosted student success. It didn't make me Puerto Rican. And similarly, when I moved to California, I needed to do a similar research as I worked with Chicano and Mexican national students. Again, learning more about Mexican and Mexican-American culture didn't make me Mexican or Mexican-American. It made me better able to serve the needs of the students who sat before me each day. So today's students are in some ways a new breed. I've called them new century students. And I do want to talk about the fact that the work that I did in 1989 with the Dreamkeepers was really kind of look at cultural history and revealing those things that typical textbooks omitted. And it was a focus on community issues, things like urban renewal, veterans' concerns, or homelessness. So that was a part of the 1989 Dreamkeepers. But it was limited in the use of student culture. In other words, I really only had one teacher who like used rap lyrics to teach poetry, but we weren't paying much attention to popular culture. And so that's different about today's students. So today's students, today's Dreamkeepers have to have a better understanding of the students' culture. They also have to realize that hip-hop has longevity, you know. When the first time that Sugar Hill Gang came out with Rappers Alike, people were saying, oh, that stuff ain't gonna last. Okay, I wanna let you know that was 40 years ago. And we're still saying it ain't gonna last. And we also need to understand, keep up with Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue is always following trends. So early on, Madison Avenue figured out there was something about hip hop that they could capitalize on. So I want to show you an example. This is old too, from Madison Avenue, keeping up with the trends.
You watch me get French Fruity Pebbles. Who are you? I'm Master Rapper, and I'm here to say, I love Fruity Pebbles in a major way. He loves Fruity Pebbles in a major way. The bedrock yellow, orange, purple, lime, and red, but to get the fruity taste, I've got a trick friend. Fruity. To get the fruity taste, he's got a trick friend. Bonnie! Yes, that's right. On Fruity Pebbles cereal, part of this nutritious breakfast, delicious.
So Madison Avenue knew there was something about this culture, right? And if Barney isn't sort of channeling Run DMC, I don't know. He got the chain, he got the pork pie hat, he got the dark glasses. And trust me, it's been a minute since anybody ate any Fruity Pebbles, so you know that's an old commercial, right? But they kind of knew and connected with people, whereas as educators, we're like, oh no, keep that out of the classroom. You know, we don't do that. So I call them New Century students because of their deep connection to hip hop. And I think they're something like shapeshifters, right? In that they don't fit neatly into the rigid categories of race, class, gender, or national origin that we've relied on to make distinctions and create hierarchy. Their sports heroes include Kobe Bryant and Jeremy Lin, Gabby Douglas, and Lolo Jones. They listen to Justin, maybe anybody listen to Justin. Justin is a criminal. Get Justin deported. When they used to listen to Justin. But at the same time that they would listen to Bruno Mars, who was actually the best thing about the Super Bowl, right? And Nicki Minaj. I mean, the kids listen across genres. They don't just listen to one thing. They're more likely to endorse things like same-sex marriage, and they can separate out hip-hop traditions. So we're baby boomers and their parents hear it all as noise. And I do want to remind baby boomers in the room that our parents call rock and roll and rhythm and blues noise. They are able to point out that there are important differences between, Lil Wayne and Immortal Technique, Lil Kim and Anastasia. They know that this culture that they've created is a mashup and that it has permeable boundaries, both simultaneously sacred and profane, with deep religious convictions and an embrace of all things secular. Now, I think I might be out of sequence with this. But one of the things that I try to get people to understand is that we have to connect the old and the new. And so, if you go back and look at Wade Boykin's work, he talked about what's called these 9 dimensions of African culture, where anywhere in the world where you saw African culture manifest on the continent and throughout the diaspora, you would see these things. So you would see spirituality, harmony, movement, verb, communalism, expressive individualism, orality, and social time perspective. So I want to give you examples of the old and the new of these things. Also, you have to realize that there are some extant American values. And I put it in quotes because we all participate in them to varying degrees. So American values include things like rugged individualism, competition and free enterprise, rationalism, control of things like the time and the environment, change, equality and egalitarianism, privacy, future orientation, and self-help. Now, none of these are bad, right? But the issue is that sometimes they come into conflict. So on the one hand, if rugged individualism is a value, but you got this whole communalism going over here, you're going to have a conflict. The way in which I think about connecting the old and the new is if you think of a movement as kind of the interweaving of movement, rhythm, I can't read my own thing inside this. Percussion, music, dance, being central to the psychological health. Well, I mean, you guys are in New York. You've seen that, right? And everybody paid good money to go see that, right? But that's movement too, right? And that's something that our young people gravitate to. Verb, that is a propensity for high levels of stimulation, energetic activity, was that? And lively action. Okay, now schools will call that ADHD. I call it verb. I have 3 boys, I have seen a lot of verb. My grandson has a lot of verb. So, if you've ever been to New Orleans, oh, it's verb. And that can be a funeral. That doesn't have to be Mardi Gras. That can be like funeral, okay? But that's verb too. Hype DJ, that's verb, right? Communalism, this commitment to social connectedness and social bonds and responsibilities that transcend individual privileges. Okay? You can't just sing it the way you want to sing it now, Sister Song. So we all in the choir together. Okay, so you got to suppress that little tendency there. Right there, that can't go there. All right? Because we singing this together. But most hip-hoppers have a crew. You know? You might be individual, but you have a crew. I mean, my favorite group is the Wu-Tang Clan. Man, I love the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Because you've got all these different personalities that come together. I mean, you ever see anybody put that many MCs on a, it's like, how many MCs y'all gonna have? But that's an idea that we're a community, and we're gonna do this together. But at the same time that you have communalism, you have what might seem a dichotomous notion of expressive individualism. And that is a cultivation of a distinct personality and a proclivity for spontaneous, genuine, personal expression. So yeah, I'm in the crew, but you know what? When I wear my hat, I know you got this hat, Sister Mars. I know you got the same hat, but when I wear it, it get cocked like this. I know you wear it like this. I don't wear it like this, right? That's I'm gonna express myself just a little bit different. Okay? We both got our stuff on, but you know, mine is a little bit different. People watch a basketball game. I mean, the rules of basketball are the same. You gotta get the ball in the basket, right? You got 24 seconds to get it in the professional, 30 seconds at the college level. None of that has changed. But some people just got their thing. So if you say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you're going to say skyhook. If you say the Iceman, George Gervin, finger roll, right? Everybody's got their way. Nobody say anything about Dr. J, because that's my husband. Right? So, I mean, you're in the community, but you also have that individual way in which you express it. Orality. That is a preference for oral or oral modes of speaking and communication. That speaking and listening are treated as performances. So think about the way in which mainstream culture likes paper. Well, write it down. When I first got my job as in the school district of Philadelphia, I had to sign a loyalty oath, right? That's a holdover from the Cold War. But I had to sign this thing basically saying that I would not overthrow the government. So I told the personnel person, I said, you do know if I was going to overthrow the government, I wouldn't care about signing this paper, right? And they're like, well, no, but you have to sign it. Because putting it in writing matters in mainstream culture. But saying it often matters in African descent cultures. But you see it, you know. well, what did you say? You know, how many times has your mother said, what did I say? She ain't right you. Mom did not write you. Don't make me tell you this one more time. Okay? That the oral matters. And that's why we love him. Don't read the speeches. We want to hear them. Because that oral matters to us. And of course, that's the coldest MC out there, right? When light was light as a rock, she really spoke to us in a particular way. So there are some new trends. I want to make sure I got the right thing in here. Okay, so I'm going to stop. So I want to show you a young man that we found in high school who was a spoken word artist. And once we saw his art, we were like, oh, we got to get this kid in our first wave program. So I'm going to show you, this is him at the high school level.
Neighborhoods are ovens with windows. And as the knob on global warming increases, lives are preheated until a soul souffles. Pancakes stack projects are poured over with a humid as thick as molasses. Heat and humidity are the perfect appetizer on death's plate. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet from May to October, and senior citizen discount is every day. If thermometers can measure temperatures, they should be able to measure human anxiety. As the temperature rises, we reach boiling points. Attitudes of those around us rise quicker than mercury, and the pressure of staying cool causes us to explode. Compressed living complexes circulate heat and cause compressed feelings to converge upon our neighbors in the hood. So that 90% release of excess body heat talked about in science class is contributed to our local temperature rising. We crack open fire hydrants until we hear lights climb, raising taxes by lowering our body temperature. And if you couldn't afford a wind replacer, fridges and freezers were propped open until your two brothers' faces are frozen. Audiences applaud the ice cream man once that familiar jingle mingles with our ears. This sweet release of flooded heat is a godsend. What do you know? The ice cream vendor's name is Noah. As the temperature rises, so do attitudes, death rates, bills, and ice cream stocks. Heat affects the elderly more than it does us. Their lungs resemble the Dow Exchange. Rises and drops until they crash. Ambulances are summoned, riding down the street flooded with the contents of the only fire hydrant. We have only just begun to fry.
So once we saw this young man's art, we started talking to him about college. And we got him enrolled in the University of Wisconsin. And, you know, the question was, well, what do you want to do? He doesn't want to be a hip-hop artist. He wants to be a climatologist. And so what is he studying at Wisconsin? Environmental studies. He's about to graduate next week, in 2 weeks. We found that what they like doing could be connected to a variety of things. I also want to share with you, I think this is one more. I've skipped that one because you guys know that one. This is an example, because one of the things I get, well, is this just for black kids? No. And so I'm going to show you this piece because I think it's pretty powerful, and it's Native American.
I feel the latent effects of assimilation in a city native raised by bright light skyscrapers. Born with big prospects, little piece of living as a child. I heard about the fact I wasn't proud like they called my ancestors. Imagine what it be to live nomadic off the land and free. Instead I was full of heat like a furnace, cause I wasn't furnished with the language and traditional ways of my peeps. Yeah, I used to feel like I wasn't truly indigenous. Now I say me which get your money, do for sure for me my true roots definitely native. Take responsibility for being educated. My people and customs originating from artifacts of history. Is deeper than dry bread and contest powerhouse. Tear shit in the sweat, George Fresco up to all those I've wronged and who have wronged me. Gotta treat them like family. Get your money, do we do coward shit. Jim mushroom with Zion, me Dutch for me, it is Zion. Me Shishanam, Zagit, Equate, when good news Shishanam, Visit Dow, Wishanam, me Wayne, Janaka, Moyan. Me Mishomi, sweet do coward Shanam, Chin, I budget too young, and Nishanam, baby, just swallowing. Me Jit, big, you can't of my chaos, Nishanam, baby, my busy when becoming a.
I wanted to show you that because that's a language that's going extinct. I've had 4 students in the past do projects on native language revitalization among the Menominee, and most of the projects don't work. And here's a young man who has taken it up and incorporated it using youth culture. And so now he's got young people who want to know what these words are, and that's probably the only way we're going to save Menominee. Is through youth culture, not through all those interventions that we come up with that were much more traditional. I want to wrap up by showing you what we try to do at UW-Madison. We are finding ways to engage young people. And the reason I included, I work with these young people. I'm teaching my second course I designed for them. The course is called Pedagogical Flows, Hip-Hop in the K-12 Classroom. Because a lot of the people who come into what's called our first wave program actually want to be teachers. What they don't want to do is go through our teacher ed program. And so I'm sort of banging my head against the wall with my colleagues saying, we have to do something different. You keep saying you want a more diverse teaching pool. I can find the students, they just don't want to do it the way you guys are doing it. I'm going to show you what we do at First Wave, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yes, I'm no struggle, but it's a lot tougher when you're consistent. 2 pressurized places at one time. Yes, I'm no struggle, but it's a lot worse when both sides of your hyphen are viewed upon as a curse. And yes, I'm no struggle.
The First Wave program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is unique in this country, probably in the world, because you're not really going to find a program at a university, at a major university, that embraces hip-hop culture, that embraces spoken word, that embraces hip-hop theater, and really acknowledges the power that all these art forms are having.
I just want to tell you I love you, but those words don't say what I really mean, and I just want to tell you get down. No language can explain when I just want to tell you I love you, Mom. I just want to tell you I love you. You can't come to our shows and ignore issues that might be in the surrounding community, and sure do exist in communities throughout the country and world. First Wave forces you to look at that, forces you to listen to it, forces you to think about it.
Imagínate ser inmigrante,
Imagine being an immigrant,
dejando todo por detrás para echar para adelante.
leaving everything behind to move an inch forward.
I'm the lady when they're lonely. I keep their blood on my blood, running through their bodies, deliverance. I hold on that purpose in their face, but they still can't leave me alone. Let my words be louder than any bomb. Send it out through sound waves. Leave speakers radiating with rich diction. Depictions of how the world would look if the words of the youth were heard.
Understanding each other is what First Wave will contribute to the university environment, because each of these students will write pieces about their backgrounds, about their experiences, about themselves.
First Wave for me is supporting me as a human being. both in the academic sense and the artistic sense.
I'm really honored to be part of the first college program to involve hip-hop and spoken word and be focused on that.
You can see when we rule the world. You will rule it with us.
For more information on First Wave or the Office of Multicultural Arts Initiatives, go to www.omai.wisc.edu or call 608-890-1006.
So First Wave is a scholarship program. These young people get a 4-year tuition scholarship. They study whatever they want to study. We don't have a hip-hop curriculum. We have, they have to study whatever the majors are, but we're using their art as a way to engage them, communicate. They have spoken in places like the London Olympics, the Cultural Olympics. They have spoken at the American Sociological Association. Ernest Morrell brought them to NCTE last year. This past year they spoke to the NC2A conference. My hope is to bring them into Chicago next spring for AERA. They're an amazing group of young people. We see them as a marvelous opportunity to engage in what I would call the most exciting generation of young students the world's ever seen. I think their passion and desire merges with new and exciting technologies. They want teachers who will demand more from them than just Googling some information, pasting it into a document. They want to do, and they want to create. They want to inspire, and they want to innovate. And they want to think critically and analytically. They want to be really serious about education. So I think I'll stop there. Sure, so I can take a few questions, or anything about the program certainly, or anything about the sort of shift that I'm doing in my own work. Yes.
I haven't even framed my question. I just want to say this is amazing. Okay. And that, I teach and I try to do, I remember the first time I told a student I'm teaching literature and he could actually take the hip hop poem, lyrics and treat it as poetry. And it changed his whole, he told me I made him go on to do master's education, master's work.
Wonderful. I mean, one of the questions that I sometimes get is, well, what if kids aren't into hip hop? My answer is going to sound flip, but I'm serious. What if they're not into Shakespeare? Which 99.9% of them are not. Right? But we teach it anyway because we value it. So we will teach whatever we value. And it's not a matter of, oh, well, this kid is not into hip hop. Well, most kids are not into most of the stuff we offer.
No, I meant to say thank you for that. It opened up some more areas.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you were speaking about this afternoon and how teachers perceive students, particularly students of color, how can we implement hip-hop pedagogy and things of that sort in classrooms where those are our teachers that do not appreciate hip-hop and do not come from those environments where hip-hop is glorified?
So part of what we're doing, and I don't have it up here, is that, and I know we got some people from Teachers College last year, every summer we do a workshop for teachers called Hip Hop in the Heartland. We'll be doing it again this summer. I should see if I can find it. And we actually, try to help teachers understand you don't have to become full hip hop. You do have to become familiar with the genre and the way in which kids are connected with it. And this past spring, a lot of the teachers are saying, we get it now, we understand it, and we're learning a lot, but our problem is our administrators. So this past spring, we did an administrator workshop and got principals and superintendents there to just see some of the work that people are doing across the country. I think that might be important. I'm not sure if that's the most current one. Is it last year? Okay. So maybe he doesn't have the current one up. But every year we do this. So I would say just kind of go to the Wisconsin website, plug in Hip Hop in the Heartland. By the time we get it up there, you'll see. It's a week-long series of workshops. And what it, I think, does for people is it gives them a community. If you saw my last slide, I talked about connecting with us. So hashtag Hip Hop Ed. You know, Chris is one of the moderators on that. Every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, there's just thousands of us in the community talking about different topics. And, you know, get some of the more important people in hip hop. I mean, we've had Dream Hampton with us, Jeff Chang. So there's a serious conversation on hip hop education going on every week. And so in some ways you can get yourself up to speed, and by building your networks, even though your colleague next door thinks, oh, this is a bunch of junk, you've got some people beyond your school that can pretty much validate what you're doing. Martha Diaz down here at NYU has documented, I think there's over 400 hip-hop programs in America. High school, colleges, so it's there, and it's not going away. Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for your presentation. Your work is very inspiring to me.
Thank you.
I only wonder a bit about perhaps maybe the opposition to a hip-hop curriculum, particularly in the current landscape of the Common Core. And I was just wondering if I could pose a question. How do you see the hip-hop pedagogy, well, the way that you framed it today, to be acceptable or feasible in the Common Core?
So one of the places where we're able to make a few inroads are those places that Common Core has yet to touch. Common Core is doing math and language arts. So we're doing a lot of work in the arts, we're doing a lot of work in social science, Chris, of course, is doing work in science. And so in some ways, because they're not, quote, being tested, they're in some ways safe ground for us. New York is probably further ahead with Common Core than many places. In Wisconsin, we're just getting started, so we have still more time to play around with the curriculum in other ways. But I think, you know, you look for these spaces, because what's starting to happen is that kids are actually learning a lot more in out-of-school contexts. Urban Word here in New York, I mean, they get like 50 kids every day crowded into a little space because these kids want to write. They want to write in school. They want to write an urban word. So, you know, I don't want to minimize the reality of the pressures that are on teachers to get kids to pass tests. But I also don't want to capitulate to preparing for tests as the only way to teach, because we know that's not good. Yes?
I was curious, maybe I'm jumping a little ahead, but you mentioned in the beginning of your talk that a socio-political consciousness is something that you see the least often when you're looking at culturally relevant pedagogy inside of classrooms. And yet, at the end, you kind of point to these teaching artists through the First Wave program who seem to embody that. That seems to be a strength. For instance, when you mentioned that, like, you can't help but to pay attention to the community and the issues that are happening within the community when this work is happening. So I'm curious in thinking about pedagogical moves that we might best understand through the practices of these artists. Have you noticed that there are particular moves along the lines of kind of this, that weekend tenant that you mentioned in the beginning, that you think?
Most of them do take up social problems.
Right.
They take up stuff like gender inequity. They take up sexual assault. They take up miseducation. I mean, they run the gamut in the kinds of topics that interest them and that they write about. So they are like perfect examples of socio-political consciousness in my mind. And so literally just having them on display helps, you know, when we work with teachers, these are ways in which you can take up things. In some ways, I want to get back to his question about Common Core. When I teach first wave students, I don't just teach first wave students. I reserve half of my section for first wave and half for other students. And I know the first course I taught, one of the teacher ed students invited 3 of the first wave students to her teaching practicum to do a demonstration to help her kids understand fluency. Now, fluency was a standard in their reading, language arts. And when they heard my students spit, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, now I get it. Yeah. So, I mean, they found creative ways to weave their art into what looks like traditional spaces. Their last assignment with me, which I have with me, and I got to finish reading all of them, is they all had to do an artist study. And I wanted them to pick, we limited to what I would call conscious artists. We limited to what I would call conscious artists. They had to tell us a brief bio of the artist. Why did you pick this artist? Tell us something about this artist's work. And how would you use this artist in a classroom? So I got a lot of Lauryn Hill. Love Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which is great. Because you compare Miseducation of Lauryn Hill with Miseducation of the Negro. It's wonderful. I got a lot of Lupe Fiasco, Immortal Technique. I'm trying to think of who else I got. Oh, got some graph artists. I got Jean Grey, Lady Pink. But there were just wonderful examples in their work of how you could, in a conventional classroom, take up these folks. I think there's a hand behind this.
I would say from a more practical standpoint, a lot of people give you no reluctance about it. If they bring to their attention that when these artists are spitting, as you say, they are sampling music from their genre and from their generation. And they're referencing people from their generation and events from their generation.
Right.
And that'll help, I believe that may help them get a little bit more on board.
Yeah. There's a wonderful artist out of Pittsburgh, Jaziri X. And I use Jaziri's work when I go out and meet with high school kids. Because Jaziri always takes up contemporary issues. He has a great piece on Trayvon Martin. Or I use Omar Offendum's hashtag January 25 to talk about Arab Spring. Because what I'm seeing, and I've been to 6 of the 7 continents, the only place I haven't been is Antarctica. You got a cousin down there, tell them don't call me. You're doing that. But every continent I've been on, I've seen this culture. I see graffiti. I see, we were in Sweden, and literally I had my graduate students with me. We were walking down the street, and I'm like, stop, y'all hear that? And I mean, these people was spitting, and I ain't know nothing they was saying. But that beat was fresh. I'm like, we going in here and hear this. We just getting with it. We don't even know, I don't speak Swedish. But I'm like, oh my God, look how this thing is just traveling around the world. And we're telling our kids, you don't have any culture, that's a bunch of junk. But other people are not only embracing it, they're making money. And that was a point I made at the earlier talk, that one of the reasons why black boys are popular is because they're so closely associated with this culture. My fear is Madison Avenue is going to pull this thing and separate it away from them, and it'll be something else altogether. And that is, I mean, that's part of the pattern, to steal from a culture, rework it, and then sell it back to you and tell you you don't have any. That's what the Fred and Barney is doing. They basically ripped off the culture, and now they sell it to you, telling you go get some Fruity Pebbles, right? So I think it's important that kids understand that they have ownership of this culture, and they ought to, maximize it. Yes.
How you doing? Phenomenal. I work in after-school programs in North Philly. Worked in Harlem, an after-school program, created a lyrical circle, that kind of stuff. But one of the things that and there's a tension, because there's a lot of self-selected. So the hip-hop you're talking about is the subculture that we teach our kids, that I try to teach my kids. But the truth is, yes, there's the Lupe Fiasco, and then you can go with the Kendrick Lamar.
And
But
there's
let's
also Lil Wayne,
but there's
Lil
2
Weezy,
chains.
there's
Exactly.
Waka Waka,
YMCM.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they're the norm. They're the
All
norm.
of that. But at the same moment, there is Hemingway and there is romance novels.
So what I'm just saying is that there was before we filtered, and in the after school program, I get to filter some of that in ingenious ways. One of the things that I'm seeing is that with Twitter, with everything, is an unfiltered process. And when you're introducing hip hop, you still need to filter it.
Yes.
And if young people are raised in an unfiltered process, they may want it unfiltered. How do we teach when they want an unfiltered kind of hip hop, right? And they're used to that by the information they get. It's not filtered anymore, it's unfiltered. And to be able to kind of still get the lessons and the experiences that we want to convey.
So in some ways you've answered your own question, because if we don't teach it at all, it doesn't mean they don't get unfiltered hip hop, right? So in some ways the school can become the place that helps them learn to critically consume it. Yes. I think if you ignore it and say, oh, that doesn't belong in school, then they're going to be listening to all the crazies, they're going to be feeling some kind of way. That's what they're going to grasp, because that's making money out there, and that's what gets airplay. Right? So the misogyny, the homophobia, the racism that is embedded in that unfiltered Madison Avenue, Hollywood, we know how to make money off of this, is what they're going to consume totally. One of our responsibilities, I think, as hip-hop educators, is to bring them back. I want you to know about Nas and Illmatic. So I got this whole big thing, Nas is having his 20th anniversary of Illmatic, and I'm having the 20th anniversary of Dreamkeepers. Okay. Illmatic here. But if I don't help my students understand that, then they'll be uncritical consumers in the same way that they'll be uncritical consumers of whatever movies they watch, whatever music they listen to. They've got, that's the gift of hip-hop education, is that we do provide the filters and the critical consciousness. Yes?
And what I do, and I'm a boomer, and I miss a lot of this by not having a biological child and having kids in the house with you like you do. You miss a whole lot. But what I do with my students in university in Nassau County, I invite some of the hip hoppers. The ones that are popular, they are really influential. I, go full disclosure. I'm a boomer. I don't know about it, but I'm not going to hold you back. So I invite people from the community, from the hood, to come and stand in front of my class, and I write that check.
Right. But I also, there has to be a place where it's okay to just consume junk, right? Everything is not going to be just, totally conscious. You don't teach the junk, but sometimes you just want to hear enough if you want. Come on, there's just some, just some stuff that's just junk. It's junk. Everybody knows it's junk.
But they need to have it. They need to,
like I said, they need to learn how to critically engage with this stuff that's important to them. And I think that this is more likely to get them engaged in other kinds of issues. Government censorship. What does the FCC do? All kinds of things that kids will have to do. So my students' final assignment is that they will have to do a mixtape, thematic. Why are you choosing this? What are you hoping to teach with this? They have to give me at least 9 songs. And then the very final thing is that my students, both my first waivers and my non-first waivers, will be performing. And it was interesting, when I first started teaching this course, I used to say, well, the first waivers have to do a performance, and the education people have to write a lesson plan. And I said, no. Everybody's going to perform. And my only rule is no one group, because they break into groups to do their performances, no one group can be comprised solely of first waivers
or solely ed students. You have to have a mix. The first time I did this, and I have the DVD for their performances, you can't tell who the first wavers are versus who the, and all of the ed students said, I've never been so frightened in my life. We get them on the stage, we give the audience and we open it up to the public. One of my favorite skits was one they did called the George Washington Carver, the Carter G. Woodson Spelling Bee. And they had two kids, one was kind of nerdy and he had his suspenders, and one had this sort of hip hop aesthetic. And so the people would throw out a word. So they'd ask the nerdy kid, how do you spell wisdom? W-I-S-D-O-M. Then they'd say, Marvin, how do you spell self-aggrandizement or something like that? And he would go, E-G-O, line, T-R-I-P-P-I-N, a line right there. Self-aggrandizement. And then the judges would go, oh yeah, that's right. It was a cute, really cute skit, but it was like, the skit was about how kids are perceiving the way in which you're putting something out there and how they're interpreting it. But to get these, quote, non-performers on the stage was quite a feat. And I tell you, all of them told me, they said, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the best thing I've ever done. So pushing people out of their comfort zones is one of the things that we're trying to do with the students. Anybody else?
Okay, so I wrote my question down. Typed it. When trying to infuse popular culture in the classroom as a way to establish stimulating conversations and a way to connect with your students, how can teachers make sure that they stray away from perpetuating stereotypes that might raise a concern? For example, in the movie Dangerous Minds, when Michelle Pfeiffer's character tries to use a song that discusses drugs to start a conversation about poetry.
Okay, really good question. One of the things that I don't see teachers do very much of, even if they don't use hip-hop or popular culture, I don't see teachers planning a curriculum around the big ideas of their field. What I see is teachers that teach this thing, and I'm going to teach this thing, I'll teach the next thing in the book, and it's all disjoint and it's all over the place. So the first thing I think any teacher has to do is figure out what are the big ideas, what are the things that you have to know to be able to say you actually know this discipline. I was a history teacher. You have to know time and chronology, okay? And it's hard to teach. It's not just give them a date. They have no context for understanding what the date means. So teaching time and chronology is a big idea in history. Cause and effect, big idea, right? So literally having teachers, number one, I said, what are the big ideas you're trying to teach? Number two, how do the examples from hip-hop culture that you're using illustrate the big ideas? So really, if you can kind of stay on that path of these are the things that help shape my discipline, then I should only be selecting those things, not just something because I like it or, the other thing is, in an example like the Dangerous Mind example, I thought she picked a really weird thing. She picked like Bob Dylan. The kids was like, who? She picked something she liked. I think it is important to look at anything that we are teaching them to see to what degree, because I would tell you mainstream texts reinforce stereotypes all the time. All the time. What's in there, with my kids from the Dreamkeepers study, I remember the teachers teaching, and the text said that the people of Nigeria are primitive. That was in the text. Now, my teacher was a Dreamkeeper, so she had a whole series of slides of Legos, where she showed the kids, and she said, where is this? And they were like, oh, that's New York. Tokyo, that's Tokyo. I know that's Tokyo. She said, no, that's Nigeria. So they were like, so she said, so let's go back and look at this sentence. People of Nigeria are primitive. Let's look at this picture. What's happening? I mean, literally, again, fostering that critical consciousness. They can't avoid stereotypes. We all do it. And again, so we are called upon to kind of critically interrupt it and challenge the students around them. And I think one of the ways you can do it in a disciplinary field is to make sure you know what are the big ideas that drive this field, you know, and how might I use popular culture to illustrate those big ideas. Okay? Yes.
I think the question that he asked, you just answered the question. Because the question is, how do you filter and how do you get them
about
to see?
filtering.
So you have to have that big idea, and then you get them to deconstruct the lyrics to say, is this in keeping with what is progressive or what is life affirming?
And I think it's really important that as a teacher, you have the authority and responsibility to set the ground rules. I started teaching middle school, and I'm going to tell you, that was not my dream. I wanted to teach high school, 11th grade U.S. history. I wanted very specifically. Number one, U.S. history is my discipline. I love it. 11th graders, best people on the face of the earth. They're the bomb. They get it, right? 9th graders, please, who wants to? 10th grade is the age of the most dropout. You look at dropout rates, people drop out of 10th grade. 12th grade, they're not really there. They're like a hologram. But those 11th graders kind of get it. But I didn't get assigned to 11th grade because 11th grade, everybody figured out 11th grade was interesting. So because of my certification, I had to teach 8th grade. The worst people. Horrible people. And literally, working with these young people taught me so much. But one of the things that would happen with my 8th graders is they would play the dozens all the time. Toasting, gapping, whatever you want to call it. But they didn't understand the historical and cultural context of it. You know, all they did is just do your mama jokes, you know. Your mama's so skinny she go hoop with a Cheerio. That's actually But, and then they would escalate in a fight. So one of the things I did is, number one, is I taught them the history of playing the dozens. That it is a ritual of insult. Every culture has one, not just black people. You know, I went to school with Jewish kids. They could talk about each other, trust me. But because we're so intimidated by black culture, we think, oh my God, they're saying these terrible things, and they're going to fight. So what I would do with my kids is say, on Friday, we have the capping, roasting, toasting contest. Here are the rules. Okay? So you can't curse. You cannot battle someone that you know well. Okay, you actually know somebody's mom? No, you don't. So they would sign up. Now, what did I link that to? Debate. Because if you ever watched the presidential debate, I mean, I'm telling you, Joe Biden, he just snatched on that board, right? That was flat out roasted. When he said, boom, you wrote a letter and half on the money. That was the mic, right? So, we reward that in certain contexts, but we tell our kids they can't do it. And so my thing was, words can be your most powerful weapon. And in fact, the rule of a roasting or toasting is if you degenerate into a fight, you lost. You lost. So helping them understand the context of it, and then letting them, and then they could tell you in a meeting, after we've done it, they say, oh, so-and-so is the best toaster. He's the best roaster. Oh, he can kill it, you know. But it gave them a context, and I have boundaries. You know, it's like I know teachers who have said, you know, to deal with the fighting, they brought actual gloves, right? And the kids, I mean, they went to the gym and they boxed. Well, trust me, if you don't know how to fight, really how to box, you're not going to hurt nobody. I don't know if you've ever had a pair of boxing gloves on your hand, but they're very clumsy. I mean, you need skill. But the idea was, if the rules are fair, that's why kids love sports. It's the same feel for the opponent as it is for me. The rules are the same. The clock is the same. I mean, and so our kids have this incredible desire for fairness. And so in some ways, what I've tried to do is impose fairness on stuff that they were doing so that they would feel like, okay, it's okay for me to do it, but here are the rules. So this, I think the same thing would apply in the use of hip hop in a K-12 setting. Now with my students, we look at everything, but it says on my syllabus something I've never said in my 20 plus years of teaching at the college level, is that some of what we will encounter is racist, homophobic, misogynist. Please don't accept that, think that's an endorsement of those things from the instructor, but there's no way for us to get into this genre without looking at what's really there. Now, but I teach adults, right, college students, but in K-12 settings, I would have some limits. There's certain stuff we're just not going to do. You know, I would specify the artists. These are the people we're going to look at, right? So I think, you know, you have that authority as the teacher. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Ladson-Billings, I just wanted to say thank you. We've obviously all laughed with you. We've learned with you tonight. We want to thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for inspiring and challenging and encouraging us in our education.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your conference.
So again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Before I close, I would like to invite you again to join us tomorrow for the conference, for the Diversity in Research and Practice Conference. We of course have a full day of paper presentations, posters, and roundtable discussions. We will recognize student work that represents our conference theme and present a special showing of the film Deputized, The Death of Marcelo Lucero, hosted by Marcelo's brother, Joselo Lucero. Please feel free to browse one of the conference programs for more information about the sessions we'll offer. And again, please ask any conference volunteers or planners or myself if you have any questions. Thank you again for joining us for the pre-conference talk tonight, and good night.